In the second set of lessons from Unit 5, we build on this idea that Unit 5 is all about tracking matter through the different parts of the Earth's system. And now we're focusing in on the water cycle specifically, but not just the water cycle. We're looking here at the cause and effect portions of the water cycle. What causes the water to move in the water cycle? And we come away with this idea that as the sun and gravity move water in the water cycle, pollution is going to get carried with it. Students confront this phenomenon that we're drinking the same water that dinosaurs drank. How can that be? We start off lesson 5.7 introducing that phenomenon, and then we jump right into different parts of the water cycle. And the first thing we wonder is, what causes evaporation? We pour a little bit of alcohol on our hands so that we can literally feel the effects of evaporation firsthand. And then we start building a water cycle concept map with the idea of evaporation. In 5.8, we look at the condensation part of the water cycle and think about what factors affect that. We look at a demo called the sweaty glass, where we see that water accumulates on the outside of the glass and we wonder, how did it get there? Then we're going to use our Pocket Labs to actually collect data inside the container as water is evaporating and condensing. And we'll then add more to our concept map about the water cycle, including concepts of condensation. In 5.9, we're ready to start thinking about those drops coming together and falling as precipitation. Why do raindrops fall? We start off looking at the anatomy of a raindrop, and this teardrop shape that we always draw, it turns out that's not actually how raindrops look when they're falling, and it really gives us insight into the forces that are acting on a raindrop as it falls. There's gravity pulling the drop down, and then there's the air keeping it aloft. In the next demo, we use a hairdryer to simulate that airflow and different size objects to represent different size raindrops. We discover when drops get large enough, the air can't hold them up, and gravity wins out and they fall to the ground. We then add these new ideas to our water cycle concept map, which keeps growing. In 5.10, we continue looking at the water cycle and figure out what happens when rain hits the ground. We do a physical model of runoff using two sponges on a clipboard, one of them saturated and one of them having no water in it to start. And we pour new water on and see how much runs off and how much percolates in. Runoff is such an important process for carrying trash and pollution, so we revisit the idea that all water in a watershed collects in the same place. If it's a watershed as big as the Mississippi River, the water and anything it's carrying all ends up in the ocean. And we add these runoff and percolation concepts to our water cycle concept map. Now it's time for students to demonstrate what they've learned by crafting a story. They have 2 lessons to illustrate their water cycle story as a comic book. By the end of the sequence, we're ready to track that water inside of our body,